welcome to another edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host today. We are here with Kit O'Connell, who is a genderqueer movement journalist with Texas Observer. Earlier today, I got a text message from a dear friend who also subscribes to the Texas Observer, and he said, Egberto, you really need to speak to this guy, Kit. He just wrote a story. He wrote a story titled Ag Commissioner, Agricultural Commissioner Sid Miller doubles down on transphobic dress code. Now I'm going to ask Kit. First of all, welcome to Politics Done Right, Kit. How are you doing today?
Pretty good. Actually, yesterday was my birthday, so I'm having a pretty relaxed day.
Well, happy birthday. I guess a bit late, but happy birthday.
Thanks so much.
But anyway, Kit, tell us a little bit about how you came about this story that you wrote. Again, titled AG Commissioner Sid Miller doubles down on transphobic dress code at the Texas Observer.
Yeah, and that was actually the second part of my story. The first part came out this past Monday on April 24th. So on the 21st, I was sent a copy of this dress code by somebody at the Agricultural Department who had received it just a few days before, was wondering what to do about it, really was concerned about its effect on their coworkers. And so they sent it to me at the Texas Observer. And so I got it. So the dress code, it's like a 2-page memo. And if you take the single sentence out that is the really core of the story, if you took that sentence out, it's a very conservative dress code, but not an unusual one. And obviously, we could talk about there's all kinds of issues with dress codes. Are they sexist? Are they racist? Right? We could talk about that. But this dress code has a really extraordinary sentence in it, which is employees are expected to comply with this dress code in a manner consistent with their biological gender. And so that is in the first paragraph of the dress code. And, I spoke to an employee of the Texas Department of Agriculture, and they told me that they almost missed it at first because, it's a whole memo. It's just kind of hidden in the beginning. But once you notice it, it really stands out. And it really is very important because that sentence seems designed to force genderqueer, trans, any kind of gender nonconforming people at the Texas Department of Agriculture basically into the closet. It says that you have to dress according to your biological gender. Now, if I can take a moment here to talk about sex and gender, just for a second.
That's one of the reasons I wanted you on, to enlighten folks.
So sex and gender are two different things, right? Sex is the arrangement of your genetics and your genitalia and your reproductive organs in general. And at birth, a doctor honestly looks at you and says, no, this looks like a boy or this looks like a girl. That's basically how it happens, to this day. So you're assigned at birth a sex and gender. Now, sex is, again, these three: genetics, genitalia, reproductive organs. But scientists are actually recognizing that when we look at the genetics of people, actually 2 in every 100 people don't strictly match male or female. Just, some of them may even go their whole lives or into their 40s before they get a genetic test or some kind of, medical situation makes the doctor look a little closer at the arrangement of things or, inside. And they realize, oh, this person actually, doesn't exactly fit into society's traditional boxes of male or female. So just to start, sex is a little bit more flexible than most of us were kind of raised to believe, right? But then gender is kind of a whole social construct that's put on top of sex. For people who are cisgender, meaning that the sex they're assigned at birth matches their gender expression, there's not much difference. A lot of people go through lives without really recognizing the difference between sex and gender because there's two match up. But gender actually is a social construct built around all the roles and stereotypes and just assumptions that people have around people based on how they kind of come across as what's traditionally masculine or traditionally feminine in our society. And it varies from society to society, what we assign to that. It's varied all through history. If we look through history, there have been dramatically different ideas of what men and women are supposed to do, and how they're supposed to dress, right? Men's fashion, men used to wear high heels. And that was originally a male, fashion. It's changed through history. There's no single thing that gender has meant through history almost. So, and then of course we have people who are transgender, who are genderqueer or non-binary like myself, and people who are just in some way not conforming to male or female gender. And all of those people differ a bit from their gender or what people assume based on how
Biological
they were
gender.
assigned at birth. Right. Yeah. Now, all these things I've been talking about, if you think about, I just that phrase biological gender, if you actually like sex is really the biological part, and gender, like I've been saying, is the social part. So biological gender is kind of this made up phrase that doesn't really mean anything, or maybe it means whatever Sid Miller, the agriculture commissioner, wants it to mean. And his name was in seal or on this memo. So as far as we know, it comes right from his office, this new dress code. Prior to this, employees had a fairly standard, again, conservative dress code, but didn't have any mention of biological gender. And, of course, people who were gender nonconforming or non-binary or trans, had to negotiate whatever stereotypes or issues in our society. But hopefully, I know that there are LGBTQ plus employees at the Department of Agriculture who've been living their lives and doing their jobs, right? And now all of them are wondering, what does this mean for me? How do I express myself? I'm sitting here talking to you. I'm wearing a dress, today, and based on the sex I was assigned at birth, the gender I was assigned at birth, assigned to male at birth. I don't match that. Does that mean that I would get in trouble if I wore, a tasteful, knee-length dress to this office? Because it does say that, women in this dress code can wear pants, but if they wear, dresses, they can't be too short. The skirt can't be too short. So like if I have this dress on, would I be getting in trouble? Would I get fired?
Yeah,
My office that I go into, the Texas Observer, people there are accepting of me as who I am, as someone who's not cisgender. And so if I show up in a skirt one day, no one looks twice, or they say, hey, that's a great skirt, Kit, but no one's going to get me in trouble. It's not something I have to think about, fortunately. And a lot of workers these days, happily, are in offices that are accepting. And I think up till now, even many of the offices at the Department of Agriculture, probably depending on where they are, we're accepting of them. And this dress code throws that into disarray. I was the first person to write about this on like I said, on Monday, but since then the media has been, responding to it and repeating the story. And a few of them, we weren't able to get a comment from Sid Miller or the Agriculture Office, but a few of them have
And you
caught
still
up.
haven't been able to get to him, right?
No, I've tried multiple times. I've called their press contact. I've been trying polite emails. I just would like to ask some questions of them, but they won't respond to me. But they have, I think, he's had some press appearances, and he also came on our local Spectrum, cable news recently, and he's been sort of defending it and saying basically that this is just about professionalism. And again, if you took that sentence about biological gender out, you could look at this dress code and say, okay, people were working from home during the beginning of the pandemic. Now they're back at the office, and the people are saying, hey, it's time to dress, back in your suits and professional wear, not in your casual wear. And
right.
Whatever, that's their right to say that as managers, right? We can talk about that, but that's not unusual. A lot of people are getting probably some kind of form of that dress code, like, hey, you can't wear pajamas to the office. But so that's what Sid Miller's trying to say. But then he's kind of equating it. He's saying, well, the way he's phrased it when he's talked to the press is that if a man in a dress, so already we have problems. This is not.
Well, Kit, he's using the terminology that's being used right now to inflict, to attempt at embarrassing the LGBTQ community. It's like what they did to to Zephyr in Montana, or what they've done to others. There's this drive to attack trans. There's this drive to attack LGBTQ folks, even in our own state legislature, where they're going crazy with this thing, as if they want a particular talking point to rile up people. What many don't understand is, while people felt freer to come out as who they are. These are things I had to learn myself. People feel freer to come out as who they are. This is nothing new. I mean, from what I understand, even back in the days of Judaism, in those days, they defined it as the 7 genders or something like that several millennia ago. Am I correct?
Well, all different societies have had different ways of handling it. There's not a universal way, but certainly, yes, people who don't fit within the strict role of male and female have existed all throughout history. One thing people have compared it to often is left-handedness, where for a long time people were punished for showing their left-handedness.
Right.
And then as soon as they stopped punishing them, suddenly there were more left-handed people. Now, there wasn't like a mutation in the human person that made us have more left-handed people. It's just people stopped having to hide that side of themselves. And so what we've seen is that, in a similar way, especially among like younger generations, happily, there's a real acceptance among, like the Generation Z, for example, they are extremely accepting of each other on the whole, gender divergence, of gender nonconforming classmates and friends, family members. And so more of them have felt free to come out. And there's also has been, not perfect as we know, but a general opening of the doors, a sort of acceptance in some parts of society. The Republicans are trying to close those doors again, but there have been, up until relatively recently, teachers have felt okay about saying it's okay to come out in my classroom. This is a safe space. And some of them even for a while felt safe talking about their own same-sex relationships in some educational settings. Just like a straight, teacher might talk about their spouse, same-sex people talk about it, and that just increases acceptance. It makes people feel okay. Things have, unfortunately, the Republicans are really trying to push about this. There's a real, you use the word embarrass, and I just want to gently correct that really it's about trying to make it so trans and gender nonconforming people can't really participate in society, that they don't feel safe being out and being out in public, whether that's limiting access to bathrooms, restricting how we dress through so-called drag bans, whether that's restricting what teachers are allowed to talk about, whether they're allowed to offer some things. I heard about something really extraordinary that happened in Houston just over the last couple of days that I think shows how strange things have gotten. Some students, this one came out in a local paper in Houston. I'm sorry, I don't remember the one right now, which one it was.
Houston Chronicle.
Yes, thank you, Houston Chronicle. But they were going to go to a play of James and the Giant Peach. And in that play, there are many characters that are literally insects, like talking insects that are, friends of James inside of the Giant Peach. And because some of those insects, their gender in the book differed from the gender of the actor inside the costume, there was pressure on some of these schools who felt to cancel some of their school trips to go see James and the Giant Peach, which, is not some new, radical left, piece of literature. It's something that's been around for a while and has, I think, fairly basic values that I thought we all used to accept, like friendship and working together and overcoming adversity, things like that. But here we are, now we have to worry about what's the gender of the insects that our children might see on a stage. It's very, very far from what I thought, things were going to be like.
Well, you know what? And one of the reasons I wanted to highlight this story that you wrote is because I think as these a lot of folks, these guys work behind closed doors, and if this person hadn't passed that letter on to you, it would have never been known. Now the idea is to make sure all of Texas understand that we have an AG that seems to be nothing more than a homophobe. And in having an AG that is a homophobe, maybe you can't write that, but I can say that because that is exactly what I see displayed in what I saw in the writing, and that you cannot.
Well, you're saying I just want to say the agricultural commissioner you're talking about, although, I do have.
Oh, did I call? I said AG. I'm sorry. Yeah, agricultural.
It's okay. Agricultural commissioner, which we do sometimes shorten with ag, but I don't want to confuse people with the attorney general, who we'd have to have a separate conversation about. So
that's a long conversation with the AG. Yes, I know, absolutely.
But yes. So there's but I mean, people, if they want more evidence, they can just go look at Sid Miller's Twitter, where he's been tweeting up a storm over the last week or so of all kinds of homophobic stuff. So he's really not hiding it, but he might have hit it a little more if we hadn't talked about this. And, the reason that I'm linking it to all this stuff, like these other issues, including what's happening at our legislature right now, which we can talk about, is it is all connected. It's all, like you said, it's part of this overall campaign to make life difficult for LGBTQ plus people, regardless of where they're, it's, again, is it sports? Is it schools? Is it bathrooms? Is it our workplaces now? It's all, they're trying to make it hard no matter where they are. And I do want to mention,
off the top of your head, Kit, what particular bills in the legislature concerns you with respect to the LGBTQ community that we can go ahead and make sure and start to highlight?
Yeah, I mean, so many. There, the Washington Post actually did a great map recently and showed that there have been just this record number of bills across the country. And there've been something like 40 proposed in Texas just this legislative session. So that's since January, when things kind of got started slowly. They ramp up slowly, but there have been 40 over this legislative session targeting LGBTQ people in some way. Trans rights, talking about LGBTQ in school. The most immediate one that's coming up, and I believe it's SB 14, is going to be heard on Tuesday at the Texas legislature. And that is a bill that is, if it passes, and it unfortunately is expected to pass on Tuesday, most likely, it's going to go to the governor's desk, where he considers this a priority. If this bill passes, it'll essentially make healthcare for trans young people illegal. And the Republicans use a lot of shocking language to talk about it. They'll talk about young people being, this is their talking points. They talk about young people being sterilized or their bodies being mutilated, but that's not what we're talking about for people. When you talk about people under 18, what trans healthcare involves is, therapy, to help them socially transition. That means, learn to use their pronouns and express themselves. Right. And in some cases, it's things like puberty blockers, which is like a reversible drug that basically slows down puberty as the person's aging. And that can really help people because, for example, someone who's assigned female at birth, but who feels non-binary or feels masculine, for them to develop breasts, for example, could be really traumatic for them. That could be a really strong divergence from who they feel they are inside. And these puberty blockers, if somebody starts them early enough, they can help a person feel like themselves as they get older. They work with therapists and stuff, as they develop. And as they're older, there's more options that open up to them. But it's not something that's rushed into. I think that's the most important thing. This is kind of healthcare that happens between young people by their feelings, very strong feelings that some of them feel since birth. I since birth, essentially felt non-binary. And if their parents and expert doctors, this takes years to go through this process. This isn't something that like you wake up and tomorrow they give you surgery or even they give you the puberty blockers. You work with a lot of experts. It's hard to access. It's slow, but they want to shut the door to this completely. And I know people I've known here for years who they own land here in this area. They consider themselves Texans. They're part of this state, and they're going to have to leave in the next few months. They're having to pull up stakes before the end of the year because they have an under 18 trans person. Treatment. Yeah, and they're going to lose access.
I actually know a family here. I know a family here in Kingwood that is going through the same thing. They're going to have to pull up and leave because it's going to become illegal for their kid who is transitioning to fully make that transition. Look, kid, I gotta go out. We're fixed on time here. Give me about a 1 minute closer, and let's get out of here.
My 1 minute closer is one that I've been saying anytime I appear on something. Is just this is a really extraordinary time in the United States, for trans people, for LGBTQ people, but for all of us, for democracy. We need to find ways to stand up for each other. All these issues are connected, whether it's LGBTQ plus issues, racial justice, bodily autonomy, it's all connected. We all need to stand up for each other, find a way to support each other, whether that's donating money, whether that's going to protest, whether that's offering a place for queer trans people to stay if they need it, whether that's supporting your local media, the local journalism like the Texas Observer. Just find some way to help out, support the journalists and the news that matters to you. and just get active. There's a million ways to get involved, but everybody needs to do something right now. So this is a moment where we just can't sit on our butts and do nothing.
Kit O'Connell, journalist at the Texas Observer, thank you so kindly for having been here on Politics Done Right.
Anytime. It was a pleasure.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.